Happy Mental Health Awareness Month, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Awareness. And today I've got a very special guest with us. He's a counselor, he is a professional wrestler, he's a mental health advocate, and he is a very good friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to wrestle the mind with Brian White. How are you doing today?
Vikram, I'm doing great, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty pumped to be here, actually.
Oh, of course. And I've wanted to have you on for quite a while, and I thought with a lot of the stuff I know about you, May would be the perfect time to have you on because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I know uh, you're very experienced with mental health. And for those of you guys who don't know, me and Brian actually trained together in professional wrestling. We trained together in pro wrestling with Canada's own Tyson Dux. So I've wanted to have him on the show for a while. So I usually like to start things off with gratitude, because I think gratitude is a very powerful force in being happy and, staying motivated and just keeping a positive mindset. So we're well into 2021 now. It's May. Somehow it's May already. So
I know.
yeah, literally. I can't believe it. But what are some things that you were grateful for to come out of this year so far?
First off, that is a great way to start things, by the way. Gratitude lists are so important for me, for my mental health and for my sobriety. So, number one out of 2021, I'm grateful to still be sober. I think that for me has to remain at the top of my list. I'm grateful that my family remains fairly stable right now and fairly healthy, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. So, 2021 is really an interesting year for us, obviously, because we're dealing with stuff, but I am so eternally grateful that I've got such open dialogue with my kids and with my wife, and that all of us are doing fairly okay at the moment.
Yeah, of course. And both of us living in Ontario, we're still in lockdown. And I know, especially at the beginning of lockdown, everybody was kind of going crazy. And then, we had that time when we were out of lockdown. Basically, for the people listening who aren't from Ontario, we've been in and out of lockdown since this whole thing started. And that can also be just like something hard on your mental health, on your mental state, because you're in the same environment constantly. You're doing a lot of the same stuff. And I find that for me personally, at first I feel like, oh, I'm doing okay. Okay. My days are getting the same. All right, now they're really similar. Okay. Now it just feels like I'm living the same day over and over again. So it can definitely get my world spinning. So how about yourself?
Yeah, it's been it certainly has been frustrating. Obviously, as you said, we dipping in and out of this, these different stages of ability to function and flow through the community and interact with people, really is tiring. Obviously, we're we're into our second year. Which is hard to believe anyway, that we've come that far. But yeah, it's exhausting, and I'm feeling it. And although I've dipped in and out of it mostly through the last year, it's been fairly light. I've had my eyes focused on some key goals, and obviously as a community elected representative, as a leader, I've had to maintain a certain level of wellness and ability to absorb other people's frustrations, and that's outside of my own walls, never mind what my kids are coping with and stuff. But certainly the last few weeks I've started to feel it a little bit more. My filter is thinning out, so I'm disengaging a lot more quickly with emails and phone calls as needed, just to try and give myself a chance to not create a situation that I'll have a difficult time getting out of. I don't want to make things worse. So I'm very another point of gratitude is I'm very grateful that I'm aware of my own wellness right now. And I've been dipping the last few weeks, so it's been hard to cope, But
Yeah.
I think I'm on, even for that little chunk of time that I've been feeling that, I'm coming out the other side right now, doing okay. And again, just trying to keep focused on, hopefully a couple of weeks from now when things changed to a different level. But man, you're right. It's been hard. It's been just so hard.
Yeah, of course. And when we were training with Tyson Dux, because we did get a 2-month period in the middle of all this where we were training in the ring, and I saw you were even bringing your son out for some nights. So how's your family been coping with this stuff?
It's been interesting because they really feel a lot of the social pressures, so their anxiety tends to be a little higher up, a little more amped up in regular times, if I want to call it that. So for the longest time, I thought, man, this thing's been actually really good for my kids, even though it's frustrating, even though obviously developmentally we're missing out on all kinds of opportunities and socially. But in a lot of ways, with my daughter in particular, who's, usually far more affected by mental health, very, very complex diagnoses, a number of suicide attempts and things like that. That all settled down when suddenly there was no school to go to. There were no social pressures. No, is this person going to cancel plans on me or not? And all of that stuff really settled some things down and allowed her to just kind of, I think, form some positive habits in terms of mental wellness. Again, a little bit strained right now because, again, we've been released from the pound a little bit and then pulled back in, and certain opportunities that seemed like they were going to happen have gotten pulled away. But both of them are doing as well as can be in this situation. I mean, I'm grateful that I'm probably in this situation where my kids are doing better since the pandemic. Not great, and the anxiety looks a little different, so I've had to make sure I'm cognizant in identifying the things that they are struggling with that were new and pandemic related and that are new. But okay, and I definitely sympathize with other parents whose kids are struggling because they've not had to go through that type of thing before. For us, the journey has been so long that it's just another layer of normal. But right now we're doing okay. They're doing okay.
Yeah, of course. And I think like whether it's a male that begins fatherhood or a female that begins motherhood, I think we've all heard that makes you change as a person. It grows. You've heard the term that, oh, you can't even remember what life was like before you had kids. If you don't mind me asking, which it's cool if you do, but how is it any, well, it's definitely different, but how has it made you grow? Because I'd guess it would make you grow even more when you have a child that does have mental health struggles. How do you find that that's like helped you grow as a person?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I remember the day that my daughter was born, and I'm sure every parent can identify, though, the minute your partner gets pregnant, or perhaps when you get pregnant yourself, that feeling of, oh my gosh, everything's changed. And certainly as an adult, you will experience a number of those things in your life, like the day that your parent gets a terminal illness, or the day you buy a house, or whatever else, right? Like you start to think in those things, like this is the day everything changes. But I remember when my daughter was born, and just thinking, like, the minute I saw her come out, and the doctor held her up, it was almost like in a movie, held her up, and I just went, in my brain, going 1,000 miles an hour with my own ADHD, one of the thoughts I was able to focus on was, this is what they meant. This is that feeling, that undescribable sense of joy and a love that you could never, ever, ever replace. A love that is so deep and profound that it's not the same thing as falling in love with somebody, because when you fall in love with somebody, there's all these complexities and there's all these conditions, like, if they're the right person, if they do these things the right way, all that kind of stuff. This was just pure love. And I remember, as we started down the journey of detecting things that we saw maybe that were symptoms of issues, that feeling of pure helplessness, right? That protective instinct that comes along with being a parent, and that inability to find the answers, and then many times when we do find the answers, having to recognize that there's actually nothing we can do about it, right? And switching our mindset from I need to fix it to I have to learn and adapt and cope and manage and develop skills that I don't have, recognize that it's okay that I don't have skills, understand it's going to take time. So I changed in that sense that I had to really put myself outside of myself. My goals and dreams suddenly were on the back burner, the number one priority, and without any resentment and without any hesitation, my number one priority was, okay, I have to do this now. I have to do that now. Sometimes it meant like I had to not accept jobs. I had to no longer as a filmmaker accept contracts that would have me flying away for weeks at a time. I couldn't do that. So then I had to, go back to like almost college years where suddenly instead of making movies and flying around the country, I was delivering office furniture because I needed to be close to home. I was mopping floors in the middle of the night because I needed to be available during the day to take my kid to appointments. Right. So those types of things really changed. And I don't want to, it's not about this. It's not about professing how selfless I am. It's just one of those things that parents do. And to me, that really changed me, and really was the key to taking myself out of the equation and learning that I can either be helpful or I can be harmful in situations, which translates into all kinds of other aspects of my life, which also led to my sobriety, right? Because I knew I started to recognize that I wasn't helpful. I was not helping, even though my mental illness or my addiction was telling me I was okay and doing the best I could. I recognized that I wasn't. So that started a whole other transition of change, obviously for the better.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, you touched on sobriety, which we will actually get into, because I think when I had Mike Bennett on, he spoke about his struggles with addiction before, and I feel like that episode helped a lot of people out. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that part up. But as I said, you brought your son to the wrestling ring with us to train a couple times. And I remember the first time I came in, it was only you there, but I just remember thinking, like, that man's a badass. I hope I'm half as cool as this guy, because like when I'm his age, because we were taking some nasty bumps, or whether it was, Tyson making us do 500 squats because someone forgot something the day before, or running laps upon laps, or chain wrestling till he gets out. You were always one of the guys that was leading the pack. And I know you started training well into your adult years, because wrestling training came into London not too long ago. So, and I know that probably takes a lot of guts. So like, how did you feel the first time you stepped in the ring and like kind of entering the business at a bit of an older age than like a lot of us do?
Oh man, and thanks for being so polite about that, and thanks for acknowledging that I'm I guess one of the guys, because I always felt like out of place for the longest time, and nobody at the dojo ever made me feel out of place. But you're putting it very mildly to say that I was at a bit of an older age. I was 41 when I first stepped in the ring. And that was as an elected official getting involved in a local storyline to try and help promote a show. And, every time I stepped in the ring, like, and I mean, I remember the lead up to WrestleMania 1. I've been a lifelong wrestling fan. I'm passionate. One of those dreams that I never got to fulfill because life takes, twists and turns, and schools were not readily available. So it was just one of those things that when I saw the opportunity, my son and I were at a show, and it took the next step, and, his storylines progressed. I recognize, I was then offered a tag team match, and at no point did I ever want to just be one of those celebs that you see on WrestleMania who don't know how to fall properly and might even hurt themselves. Ironically, I broke my wrist in the match, but I I primarily didn't want to make it look bad by being one of those, special guests who doesn't know how to take a bump properly and all that stuff. I wanted to protect the integrity of the visual presentation and not hurt anyone else. So that's a long-winded way of getting there. I walked into Tyson's because I knew we had 2 months until a show that I was going to be wrestling in, and Tyson finally reached out to me because I think I was just a little hesitant, and it was about 5 weeks ahead of the show, and he's like, hey man, you really should start coming and get in the ring here so I can show you some stuff. And I'm like, okay, right? And then hesitant. So I get there nervous, and I don't even know if you could appreciate this because we were at a slightly different venue than when you and I met. But it was in the back of an old hockey arena. You probably know it in London, called the Velodrome. But for everybody else, it's a retired hockey arena that then became a velodrome, which is like a cycling training track facility. One of those sideways ramps that goes around what used to be the dome of the hockey rink. And Tyson's ring was buried in the back of this place next to a garage door, unheated, where the Zamboni used to come in, completely unheated. It's the middle of January. It is bloody cold, but not just that. You had to walk down a dark hallway, go into like a furnace room, duck under a little doorway, avoid the pipes coming from the ceiling. It was exactly the way it should be. But not only that, when I got there, I sent Tyson a message and said, I'm in the parking lot. He said, I'll send somebody right out to get you. And I mean, I'm in the front door waiting. I don't know who's coming to get me. And some dude in wrestling boots, wrestling tights, and full makeup came up to me and introduced himself to me. And he's like, I'm one of the wrestlers. And I was like, you don't say, right? Like, are you kidding me? So yeah, that was sort of the precursor. But I'm telling you, like, stepping in that ring to take the first bump was scary. That was scary. And when I took the first bump and almost puked, I thought, what the hell do people do this for? Like, is this real? It's right. Like you remember taking the back body drops the first time, like that. I remember those feelings and thinking, like, there's no way in hell like I could ever do this for a living. But I didn't want to look stupid. And I thought I was just going to survive it and get by. And I remember showing up late sometimes on purpose because I didn't want to run the workout deck. Even though I've been going to a gym for a couple of years to try and take care of some injuries and stuff, I'd never trained that freaking hard. It's hard.
It's especially with Tyson.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because rightfully so. His attitude is you're an elite athlete. You want to perform in front of people, even if it's 50 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he treats it. You are an elite athlete, and you have to keep up. So those first few sessions, I not only was I not keeping up. I mean, I was taking the moves and doing everything I could to try and remember. I was recording the sessions so I could play them back and remember stuff. But I thought I was getting through one match, and that was the end of it. And that was going to be my WrestleMania moment. I'm done with wrestling. Happy as anything. I loved it. What a privilege. But then another company came to town, and then they asked me to participate. And that was now I'd broken my wrist, had 9 months to heal, and thought, you know what? I'm just so happy to do it. I'm so happy doing it. And my son loved going with me to the dojo. And it became a family thing. And since we were dealing with so much mental health issues in the house, I talked to my wife. I said, I think this is really good for him, for us to like be in the car together, drive into London as often as I can make it. No commitments early on. It was just, can I drop in and out? Well, I'd show up one night. We'd run the ringer. I'd be like worn out, completely gassed, bagged, thinking, thank goodness I have meetings tomorrow night. Because then I don't have to put myself through this. And then the next day would come around, and halfway through the day I go, I'm gonna not go to my meetings tonight. I'm going to London. Like that's and it just started to take hold of my life. It just took over.
It's crazy, honestly. And I remember my first day. Well, I actually know the exact location that you were talking about, how Tyson built the ring, because I've known Tyson since I was like 13, 14. I got introduced to him. So initially, I helped him build his ring there, and I was hoping,
Wow.
yeah, I actually helped him build his ring at the original location, and I was just hoping maybe because my parents weren't quite on the side of me training for wrestling yet, so I was hoping maybe this guy will sweet sugarcoat it a little bit, but knowing Tyson, he told the truth, and part of it is so I couldn't train for I couldn't train for a little bit longer because I needed parental consent, but eventually got that, and I started training. And I remember after my first day, because the first day, like how you talk about the deck of cards workout, I think we did Ric Flair's deck of cards, which was crazy. And the next day, I could barely properly walk, and I was getting ready to go again. And my mom's like, "Are you sure you want to go again? You're like, you don't have to be a wrestler if you don't want. You can stay home, or you can just take a day off." I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna go. I have to show how much I want this." But yeah, it's crazy, honestly. And Tyson's a great trainer, and we had some great training sessions over there. But
Well, you
yeah,
remember that first week you were there, and we had because it was sort of like a restart for some of us, right? Like I was already a graduate at that point or whatever. I mean, if we were even tracking, because my attendance was so different at the time than anyone else's, although never any favors. Like Tyson never treated me differently than anyone else. Nobody else expected me to get away with anything just because I'm the old man or I'm the celebrity wrestler who only wrestles some local shows, right, or whatever. That first, yeah, I remember coming back and starting and being actually really excited to start fresh, like where you guys were going to be, like taking the first steps for the first time. And sort of having the opportunity to redo that and re-cement some of that, because my initial training was so fast-tracked that I missed some of those fundamentals. And but I had a different view because I was already in better shape, and I'd been working my butt off already, even outside of the dojo since the pandemic started. I just took over my own training, right? But we had a lot of guys there, right? Or a lot of guys and gals there. That first week was packed. I thought there's no way we're ever going to get any fair ring time. And by the end of that first week, we'd almost cut the group in half because it was so hard, right? People were puking in the parking lot. Some people showing up from other parts of the country, like they've already been wrestling, but they just want to top up their skills. They didn't stick around for more than a week. And there you were, grinding it out from scratch, and within that 2 months already, you were flowing around in that ring like you were an old hand. It was pretty impressive. So good for you. And
I appreciate you saying that. I really do.
Well, it was nice that our last night in the dojo, I'm probably the first guest you've had that's actually beat your butt in the ring.
Unfortunately, yes.
but that last night we had there together was such a good session, because I think even though it was cut short again by the pandemic, all that hard work that you had to put in just a couple of months was starting to pay off already, and you could already see the progression, right? And that's why Tyson is such a great trainer, because he got you started with fundamentals. I showed up at another wrestling school because I was at a conference one time, and while I don't drink, so while everyone else is drinking for every night during a conference, I'm looking around to see, is there an AA meeting? Is there this? Oh, look, I'm going to go and train at whatever wrestling school for the night. Make the connections. Yep, absolutely. Come in and train with us. But they didn't know if I was brand new or nothing. They didn't know anything about me other than I knew somebody who got me in the door. And they had me jumping off the top rope the first day, and I thought, oh man, this is bad. And then we got in the ring with somebody else who, it was only their second day, but I didn't know that because I've never been there. So we're putting together all these mini matches. I didn't know that this guy was just a super fan, but hadn't really done anything in the ring. So we put together all these great spots. I thought this will look really fun, until I recognized after he landed on my head and heard everyone go, "Oh my gosh, why would you agree to do that with this guy?" I'm like, what do you mean? Well, it's only a second day. Well, then why do you have him running the ropes and giving leg drops and what are you thinking? Right?
Yeah, I
So
don't know. It's crazy what some schools will like. That's why I also feel like we bring up gratitude again. Very grateful that Tyson's my trainer because he really wants to start us up from the ground level. Like we started with chain wrestling. We didn't even go in the ring for the first few times, and that as much as at the time I'm like, man, I want to go in the ring. I want to feel how it feels to get in the ring. I'm like, I wouldn't have gotten the chain wrestling down on pat if it wasn't for those first couple weeks of just train wrestling on the floor. So yeah, it's definitely important to start with the fundamentals and stuff. And like how we said, you did start at a little bit of an early age than other people, but one of the greatest of all time himself did do that by the name of Diamond Dallas Page. And right there, DDPY has impacted your life a lot and changed it for the better a lot. And I've worked out with you because you've recently started being an instructor for DDPY, and Sarah and Tom. How has DDPY impacted your life?
man, it is so important to me now and in such a short period of time. But we with the dojo had exposure to one of Dallas's number one trainers, like in the world, who happens to live in London, there where you live, and Sarah would come in once a week and run us through a half hour or an hour, depending on the size of the class we had that day, and give us a chance to stretch out, build some stability and core strength and stuff that DDPY is really good for. But when the world shut down, man, like, pandemic, my wife's gone away for 3-4 months because of mental health issue, eating disorder. Like literally the same weekend that everything shut down. And my kids were now no longer able to go to their appointments. And again, I've got a suicidal teen and a younger one who deals with PTSD. And suddenly my partner is gone. We know everything shut down. And I'm now 24/7, my kids, entertainer, educator, custodian. I already was the cook. So, but I'm now everything to these kids 24 hours a day with no help, no outlet. The gym shut down. The personal trainer that I was paying to train me, I couldn't see anymore. The wrestling school was shut down, which 3 nights a week was a major outlet for me. Everything stopped, and I, as an elected official, everything else piled on. So my job got twice as complicated, 10 times as complicated, both as a parent and as a counselor. And none of my outlets were available to me. AA meetings were shut down. DDPY literally became the only outlet I had on the fly. I was calling my old personal trainer and saying, I don't know, what do you think if I use this? Can I do this? I was looking for weights to buy online. Well, everybody was buying weights. There wasn't a damn weight to be had. And so he was sneaking me some weights from the gym to help ease my mind. But, doing a porch drop off with some resistance bands, and I was ordering stuff from Amazon. But DDPY, DDP yoga was the thing that I was able to quickly identify as something I was already doing, already familiar with. And I was going to just start doing that every single day and focus on it. I wasn't intending to be a trainer, but it didn't take long before I figured out that I wanted to be a trainer, because I recognized that I was actually functioning very well at a high level with DDPY, because it's transferring all of this like elite athlete training that we were doing with Tyson and with my personal trainer. I was focusing all of that energy into DDPY. So it was my only mental health outlet. I could carve out an hour a day and shut my kids down, make sure they were safe, make sure they were doing something, not to ignore them, but this is my time. I invited them to join me at first. They did a little bit, and then they decided they would rather do other things. And was probably for the best, because that really became my time. And honestly, I don't want to sound like an infomercial, but it changed my life. It gave me the mental stability I needed when I had no AA meetings and nothing else. It gave me the physical strength and conditioning and cardio training that I needed and wanted and craved when everything else shut down. And, I slowly and surely stopped, craving weightlifting. I was able to focus on body weight exercises, so I was still getting that rush and that fix. And then magically, I started healing all these old injuries that I've been carrying around with me for years and years and years. Some of them since I was 18. And all of a sudden, I was feeling pretty damn good. So that's when I knew I wanted to start giving this to other people in training. And I realized I was able to probably function at a high enough level that I'd be a good candidate to be a trainer. And long story short, Sarah agreed to mentor me, and now I'm on that path with her and with Dr. Tom Wallen out of North Carolina, which is amazing to me.
Of course. And they're two great trainers, because I've trained with them during the 100-day challenge that we did over the pandemic. And yeah, DDPY is great. And from my experience, it's been great too. Definitely feel a lot more fit and flexible. And also, you just hear from so many guys in the business who do DDPY that it's prevented them so many injuries. So it's definitely something that you guys should check out. Not only if you're going to be in the wrestling business, but just in general, because it's just good to be in shape, feel fit. But not only that, just to know that, let's say you slip and fall, or I don't know, some sort of injury in the workplace happens, there's a chance you'll be fine because of DDPY, honestly.
It's funny you say that. I've been walking with my kids since the start of the pandemic, usually about 4 or 5K per kid separately. So we kept walking all through the winter, and I never fall. I always thought like I must have been a cat in a past life. Like I was not good at falling. I was always able to somehow catch myself. I fell like 6 times this winter on ice. And maybe that's because I'm just purely walking more outside, but I didn't get hurt once. That's either the wrestling part of it's the wrestling training, because when I went down, I just straight up bumped on my back, and I was like, get my hands out of the way, tuck my chin, say wee, and here we go. But between that and the flexibility, I fell on ice 6 times this winter, and I didn't miss a beat. I got back up. I kept walking. I worked out the next day. It was great. Funny you should mention that, but it's a great point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I almost there's been times, especially during the winter, because it's a bit icy this year. I didn't fall on my back, but I kind of fell and my legs would do a little split sort of thing. But I didn't feel like I felt fine, honestly. It's DDPY is great. Sean, because we did briefly touch on sobriety, and I believe you said it was 11 years ago that you wanted to make the change because you were an alcoholic. And many people struggle with mental health because of addiction, right? Many people, whether it's addiction to alcohol or drugs or anything along those lines. What was your journey to sobriety like, and what advice would you give to anybody struggling with addiction?
Yeah, it was, and addiction's a tricky beast at the best of times, right? And I recognize today that there's a lot of people that are cross-addicted, and I was too. I smoked weed as hard as I drank. Sometimes at the same time, sometimes I was smoking to convince myself I wasn't an alcoholic, so I would just smoke from the minute I got up in the morning till the minute I passed out. And then not drink for periods of time and say, see, I don't have a problem with either. But, I couldn't keep any in my possession at any point, because if I did and thought I was saving it for the weekend, I was out long before the weekend, So it was never about a party. Ever. It was never about a good time. It was always about covering up feelings, and the thing that really I think holds true for most addicts is Many of us fall into addiction to mask pain. That's basically Gabor Mate's definition of addiction is you're essentially masking pain. Um, the thing that a lot of us do is we use it to cope and to feel better, to fit in, or to lessen our anxiety or whatever. And it's sometimes hard to know, did the mental illness happen first, or did the mental illness come as a result of the addiction? But one thing I can definitively say is that anyone who is in addiction is creating far more mental health concerns long term than they had going in anyway. So you might have had a mental health issue before you started using problematically, but I caused so much trauma for myself in a blackout, in my drinking, in the things I did to my family as well, and then the re-traumatization that causes. So my journey to sobriety was, it was like tripping over hurdles every single day, knowing that, oh, okay, there's the path, there's the track I want to run on. The problem is I just couldn't see the hurdles for the longest time. So every time I thought I was catching my stride, saying, this day's the day, right? I'm good. And maybe not even trying to quit at that point, but just saying, all right, whatever I did yesterday or whatever happened last week, that's all in the past now. Today's going to be totally different. And then I'd start to run and I'd fall straight on my face again because I would drink or because I would smoke or, it was, an endless journey of, I jumped off balconies, I crashed cars, I ended up in the hospital because I was blacked out and somebody broke my knee for me. And choked me and robbed me, and I woke up in a back alley. All these things that should have caused me to quit didn't cause me to quit. And then after a while, I would start to, so in a sober moment, recognize that, man, those things were terrible that I said to this person, or that I did, or that whatever, or the risk I took. How could I do that to my kids? How could I do that to these people? How could I endanger people? And it's kind of weird, if you know what I mean. Like, it would bother me that it was starting to no longer bother me. So I would almost have these like third eye view of myself and say, I'm numb. Those things used to, if I caught myself doing or saying those things in the past, it would bother me. And now I'm starting to see that I'm actually not even bothered by it anymore. And that was starting to bother me, thankfully, if that makes sense. It sounds pretty abstract, but and I tried to quit. Like, I'd just wake up and say, okay, I'm not going to drink today. And that didn't go so well, right? And then I'd say, okay, I'm only going to have a couple. So the last few years was a hard spiral, missed opportunities. Like, I was angry all the time because this person didn't follow through on their promise, and really it was me not following through on my opportunities, right? I had so many doors opened in the film business that I just couldn't walk through because I was not capable. I was just broken. And that was starting to hurt me. Seeing where my family lived at the time was hurting me. But right near the end, and obviously shame, guilt, remorse, everything I felt as I woke up, uncontrolled anger, misdirected at the wrong people, and sadness that I just couldn't shake. My last while drinking they weren't my biggest performances by a long shot, but they were my biggest hurts inside, my biggest heartaches, my biggest mental anguishes and self-disappointments. So while I was not doing the things that I had done in the past that I talked about that should have caused me to quit, they were things that I was just waking up every day thinking, like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't feel this anymore. And then I would start to think, my kids can't go through what I went through when I was young. And And then my father instinct that we talked about earlier, I will do anything for my kids. I will protect them at all costs. And it really started to become apparent to me that I needed to protect them from myself, which is kind of a weird thing to say. So I was starting to prepare, to be honest with you, to end my life, because I didn't think there was a way for me to live somewhere else in the country to allow them to be safe from me. I didn't think there was a way for me to know that my kids were out there somewhere and I would just miss them so damn much, but that I wasn't capable of being their father. So that to me seemed like the only logical solution, which is pretty hard to wrap your head around. But that's how much I loved my kids, because I recognized that I was not able to provide them the life that they deserved. But I had one shot, and my last drunk, I was working in a church as a custodian. I unlocked doors for groups. I set up tables for groups, and I'd set up the tables for this health fair, and that was happening the very next day. And I was like blitzed, and but I'm still doing my job, right? Because I can do my job. I can work and drink. And they were setting up their tables for the health fair that was happening the very next day. And one of the tables was for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember seeing the sign on the table as everybody was setting up their stuff. There was this massage therapy and this care products and all these things for seniors health and all this other stuff. And there was AA. And I finished my drunk that night, woke up the next day. My wife had been embarrassed about the way I'd conducted myself publicly. Again, not my greatest performance by any stretch, but just slurring my words and being loud and stinking like booze out while my daughter was at gymnastics, right? And she was humiliated. And that was the morning, when she said, "What are you going to do about it?" And I just said, "I saw a sign." And she's like, "Yeah, that's not funny." I was like, "No, I actually saw a sign, and it said AA on it. When I go to work today, I'm going to talk to that person." And then that was it. That was it. Because now I said it out loud. And I've never taken a drink since. And that's why, because once I said it out loud, it changed, that was the moment that changed everything. That meant I was accountable now to myself, because I could no longer lie to myself. I no longer could say, oh, no. It'll be different next time. Right? That window of opportunity was opened about this wide. And I'm so grateful that in that moment that my wife asked me that question, that I chose to not lie and just said, I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, of course. And no, that's a fantastic story. And I think that can help out at least some out. I like I always say about my show, whether it's like one person listening or like a couple hundred this week or whatever, as long as I'm able to help out one person, or my guest is able to help out one person out there, that's the goal. And I think that story can 100% help someone out there. So saying it out loud and just taking in that accountability, obviously it's something really hard that a lot of people have to go through, but it's not impossible to overcome. And I think that's very important to put out there. And yeah, that's a phenomenal story, and I'm very happy to see that you overcame that, because it's like you're a totally different person now than you described yourself to be before. Yeah.
Well, and I think, and thank you. And I think what's really important is when you learn coping skills, right? Because I didn't learn coping skills. I wasn't able to process all of those misdirected feelings. I'm grateful. I know I had some counseling around the same time as well that helped me. So it wasn't just going to meetings, and everybody has different needs. So it's really important to recognize too, especially, and again, I'll always recognize that people that are using meth or, OxyContin or, fentanyl, those substances have a different grip on you as well than alcohol does. So that is a whole other layer of stuff that people have to deal with. But ultimately, there's a whole lot of emotional and mental healing that has to happen. And I'm super grateful that I gave it enough time and that I trusted people enough to know that my only other solution was to die. And I figured if I stuck around on the planet long enough without quitting drinking, I was going to die anyways. It was probably going to be either a slow, painful death for my family to witness, or whatever. Just wouldn't have been pleasant, that's for sure. I was just grateful enough that I'm grateful that I took enough time to let my brain change, because it takes time. You have to learn coping skills. You have to trust people. You have to trust people. You have to be able to ask questions and say, I don't know how to handle these feelings I'm dealing with right now, and the only way I've ever done it before is to use or to drink. And since I don't want to do that right now, can you help me out? And sometimes the sad reality is they'll tell you, you have to feel it, man. You have to feel it. You have to learn how to feel things. Happy, sad, everything in between. You have to learn how to feel it. And it took a little while, but I could understand as my mind was changing, and how blessed I've become to be able to be grateful. And through that process, learn how to pause before I say something hurtful to somebody. Do I really need to say that? Will that be helpful, or will that be will that hurt somebody? If I wasn't in this picture right now, what would be the most beneficial thing for this to happen, to happen here? Okay, cool. Well, can I help that happen? No. Well, then I guess I don't need to be involved in this situation at all. It really helped me to check my own ego, right? And learn, because ego is also, if you hate yourself so much that everything is still about you, like, oh, they did this to me, and they said this to me, and they did all that stuff that happens. It allowed me to take myself out of the equation most of the time. I'm far from perfect, but enough to process the moment, to process feelings, and to really empathize and understand what other people need. And that to me is the biggest change. Like, yeah, I do feel like I'm a different person, and my goalposts have changed too. Like, I'm so grateful and happy for so many small things that I have. I don't have to have all the things I was lamenting before, not being able to do or not being able to have that. I'm so thrilled to be able to spend an evening walking, in the neighborhood with my kids. I don't need Disneyland. Disneyland's fun. I can enjoy it when I go. But I can also enjoy, grabbing a coffee with my wife and sitting in the car by the lake, or going to a park with my kids and throwing a ball. That to me is the most important thing about sobriety, is learning to appreciate all those little things and live in the moment. And what a blessing for me.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And honestly, with all that being said, and how we said you're basically like a changed person now, how would you say Brian White maintains his positive and healthy mindset now?
It's really about acknowledging all of those feelings, good, bad, or indifferent, being mindful, living in the moment, letting stuff process. And even though, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know who I am or what I deal with, I've talked a lot about it. My family's dealt with a lot of stuff, and my constituents deal with a lot of stuff, and there's a lot going on, and I'm generally very busy. It's being unapologetically able to say, this is my time right now. I'm going to do my walk. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to put my headphones on, and I'm going to listen to music and take a walk, because that's what I need. And I know everybody struggles with time management, and I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do it either. But I'll tell you what, I more than make up for it, because I'm twice as productive. I'm less scrambling, when I'm trying to type things or task plan, simply because I give myself that time. It's putting gas in the tank. That's how I'm able to do it. And it's also the depersonalize things, like I talked about. Everything that happens in my world, 99.9% of it, I have no control over it. So I have no control over it. I can't get stressed about it. I
Yeah,
can't.
why stress?
I can't change it. So, and
Yeah.
if this person is unhappy with me, okay. Did I do something? Maybe. Can I fix it? Possibly. But maybe I can't. And if I can't, then honestly, that's their problem, not
Just
mine.
control the controllable.
That's
Yeah.
it. People, places, and things I have no control over.
Yeah.
I can't control how somebody feels about me. I can't control what happens. I can't control the pandemic. I can use the tools at my disposal to try and make the best decisions I have available. And that right there is my philosophy. I say it a lot in AA meetings, especially since the pandemic. We are all doing the best we can in any given moment with the tools we have in the circumstances that we're in. Always. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes other people make mistakes. But if I genuinely believe that everybody's doing the best that they can, then that frees me from judging them. It frees me from false expectations and the disappointment and the bitterness that comes with all of that stuff. So if I give all that up, it's actually kind of easy to be positive, even in difficult times, and not be fake about it at all. Because I can focus on what I can control, and as you started the meeting or the interview today, I can focus on those things that I'm grateful for, and I'm super blessed. I'm super blessed to have this empty 2-liter bottle that my kids had, iced tea in, so that I can measure my water intake for the day. Like I'm grateful for that. Like it's handy to have that. So I didn't have to go buy a bottle to measure my water. I know that's 2 liters, right? So if I drink 2 of those a day, I'm happy. Like those little things honestly mean the world to me.
Of
And
course.
if you focus on that stuff, it's so easy to be, okay, even for a moment. Just be okay. And that to me is also the change in the goalposts. If we're always striving for eternal happiness, we'll never get there. Learn to be okay with okay. Because
Yeah.
some days that's the best we're going to get, and it might only be for 5 minutes. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to embrace those feelings. And if it goes more than a couple days for me, I start to do the work on it. But otherwise, if I'm having an off day, I allow myself the freedom to have an off day. And then if I'm okay for a couple minutes in the middle of all of that, I try and recognize it, and then I'm like, okay, all right, that's the best I'm gonna get today. Okay, I'll be cool with that, and hope for better tomorrow.
Of course. Absolutely. I think that's some excellent advice, and that's definitely a great mindset to have on life. So, wrapping things up, because I do like that we started with gratitude and ended with gratitude, I just have one final question. When it comes to an incredibly tough and gifted individual like yourself in the ring, next time Brian White and Vikram Prashar step into the ring after lockdown, how quickly do I beat you?
Oh, dude, you better bring it. And you know what? I might inflict a little pain, but after that beatdown I gave you last time, if you don't take it to me and pin my shoulders, I will be so unapologetically, inappropriately disappointed in you. So I'm giving you 5 minutes. If you can't take me out in 5 minutes, then I'll just be sad.
5 minutes? I think I might only need 3. All right.
Dude, with the guns you're building, I'd put money on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian White. We just wrestled the mind with him. Anything you want to plug, social media or anything along those lines?
Yeah, if you want to check me out right now, I've got, as I'm taking on clients for Ddpy yoga instruction, getting my teaching hours in. I'm not able to charge you for these lessons, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty good at it. So if you want to have one of the best instructors in training who's being mentored by legitimately two of the best instructors on the whole planet. And in my classes, I have people from Japan to Texas and everywhere in between. If you want to join us right now, it's free because I can't charge you. So join in our class, learn what DDP yoga is all about. We'll make you sweat, we'll strengthen your core, we'll stretch you out, we'll give you a longer life. And you can check me out as I post the updates for those classes all the time. Instagram, Brian White 519. Twitter, Brian White 519. Or just hit me up on Facebook. Look me up, Brian White. I'm in Sarnia, so you'll know it's my link if it pops up either as Brian White for Sarnia Lambton. That's my councillor page. Or just add me on Facebook.
Absolutely. Everybody check that stuff out. I'll leave a link in the description for those watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me, and everybody have a blessed day.